Steve Robinson, he is a filmmaker and investigative journalist whose work focuses on his home state in Maine. He is the editor-in-chief of themainewire.com, host of the Robinson Report, a newsletter and podcast on Substack. And he's also done a documentary, High Crimes, the Chinese Mafia's Takeover of Rural America. And it is a really important documentary. That's with Tucker Carlson, is it not, Steve?
Yes, that is. In fact, it's available at tuckercarlson.com, and Tucker actually saw the importance of the work that we were doing and offered to partner with us on the documentary after I taped an episode with him. But I have to give kudos to you as well, because you were one of the first in the national media to invite me on to talk about our ongoing investigative work on this topic. I think it was more than a year ago you had me on to talk about this. Yeah. And things are trending maybe in a better direction, I'll say, but still not quite contained.
Well, that is good. What do you know about the Trump administration, saying no more farm buying for China?
Well, I think that it's seriously important in states where there's much more military property, where there are large vital bases, because you're seeing huge amounts of farmland purchased around these. But I think that the focus on farmland doesn't quite capture the full scope of the problem, because here in Maine, what we see is residential houses are being purchased, and sometimes they're through LLCs, sometimes they're through natural-born citizens or naturalized citizens who just happen to be of Asian descent or Taiwanese descent or Malay descent. So I don't see very clearly how you can enforce these kind of capital controls and prohibitions on property buying by individuals tied to the People's Republic of China, because what we've seen in Maine is they're very clever about how they launder money, about how they move illicit marijuana around the United States, and how they acquire property and how they organize these businesses. So I think it's not as simple as just saying, we hereby declare that you can't do bad things anymore with our farmland. You're going to have to, you're going to have a response that is as sophisticated as the criminal networks that are looking to exploit American weakness.
So I agree with you that, I think what he was thinking especially important is the farmland all around our bases. You saw what happened with Russia. You have a barn, you have, 1,000 drones in it, you unleash it. You take out that base quickly. And, that's really dangerous to have them right up next to our bases. Explain for anybody who doesn't understand what we're really talking about, how big the problem is in Maine. Explain the problem.
So in 2023, the Department of Homeland Security had a memo that ended up getting leaked that said that there were 270 residential properties in Maine that had been purchased by Chinese drug cartels. They were being used to grow marijuana illegally, and that marijuana was being trafficked out of the state to be sold at various other locations on black and gray markets. And these organizations were also involved in narcotics trafficking and human trafficking. Since that time, I've gone out and attempted to document the full scope of the problem. And I would say, earlier this year, if you'd asked me, I'd say, well, we're probably looking at more like 400 or 500 properties. But since the publicity from releasing our documentary, I've had so many conversations with very well-connected people in the real estate industry, connected people in law enforcement, and I'd say we're probably looking at, just in Maine, 700 to 1,000 residential, commercial, and multifamily properties that have been purchased by Chinese criminal organizations for the purposes of exploiting trafficked human labor to grow cannabis and sell to Americans. And the scope of the problem, I think, is it's localized in Maine because of the property buying and where the growing is occurring, but it's national and even international. Because foreign countries are complaining about American weed grown illegally, in many cases by Chinese cartels, being exported into their jurisdictions. But it's happening in every state, even states. Midwest states, good conservative states where they think, well, we haven't legalized marijuana, so it's not a problem for us. Well, go look at your local tobacco shop and go look at your local hemp shop. Are they selling THCA? They could be selling some Chinese-grown marijuana from Maine under false pretenses. But the buyer and the seller, they know what's going on. It's just law enforcement and lawmakers who don't really know what's going on. And the risk of that is the lack of regulation, but also the Chinese toxins that are being found on these products in Northern California, in Massachusetts, and in Maine. They're crazy toxins that were only identified when some California officials brought in the weapons of mass destruction lab from the National Guard to test these substances that they kept finding at Chinese pot grows
What
in
are they?
Siskiyou County. They are totally unregistered nerve agents that have no approved agricultural use in the United States. In some cases, they're even banned in China, but they're importing them here under false pretenses, and they use them like fumigants in their hoop houses or in residential properties. So they're like mad scientist concoctions of these nerve agents that the indentured servants who are using them really don't know what they are, except for it says, bug poison on the front in Chinese and how to use it. And they'll burn it, and the smoke fills the house or the hoop house and just coats everything with this toxin. But the fact that they're unregistered and they're made in China means that the cannabis testing labs aren't equipped to determine if weed has been contaminated with them. So you could have some Chinese-grown weed that has been exposed to these toxins and bring it to a lab and say, hey, is this safe to smoke? Is this safe to consume? And they'll give you a thumbs up. Yeah, we didn't detect any pesticide or fungicide on it. You're good to go. And this product is being exported across the United States. Being sold on black and gray markets, being sold at hemp shops, tobacco shops, and we don't even know. We haven't even begun to wrap our arms around the scope of the health crisis that could be caused. And, I know that you're familiar with the book Unrestricted Warfare. If you were trying to wage chemical warfare against the United States, how would it look any different than convincing the American public to pay you to poison them?
So, I've been saying for a while now that the marijuana, but mainly fentanyl, this is the opium drug war, just in reverse. England knew that, they could send opium in to China and drug the people and collapse them from the inside. And that's exactly what they did. And China eventually just had to give, because it was enslaving all their people. That is exactly what they're doing to us right now, because they don't need the money. They're not doing it for the money. And what is happening to the money? Is the money then going to support other things here in America? Is it all being sent back to China? What's happening?
Well, that's the question that keeps me up at night, and that should concern every American. It's at the state level, to the extent that this product is being sold at a dispensary in Massachusetts or Maine, it's still an all-cash business due to federal law. Yeah, exactly. No bank is going to take a swipe of a credit card to buy, your baggie of weed at the dispensary, even if it's legal at the state level. So it's an all-cash business. Well, what a brilliant way to stockpile untraceable cash behind enemy lines if you're a Chinese criminal organization. And what might you do with that cash? If there's some of your Iranian friends with shoulder-fired rockets that you want to smuggle over the border and take care of them, well, that cash might come in handy. Last week we saw an indictment handed down in the District of Massachusetts that there were 7 Chinese nationals or people with historical ties to China who were indicted, and they were ringleaders of one kind of tiny corner of the Chinese drug situation in New England here. And they had Porsches, a $1.5 million house, $75,000 Rolexes. One of these guys had $600,000 in rubber bands hidden in his Porsche. So they're not stockpiling this cash so that they can wear, Louis Vuitton necessarily, but there's a little bit of that happening. But more, I think we have to worry about the other malign intentions of these actors, given that we know that they're affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party. We can prove this. Philip Lenzacki from the Daily Caller News Foundation has expanded on some of the reporting that we've done at the Maine Wire, and connected an individual who was arrested at a grow house in central Maine outside of Bangor with a front group linked to the New York consulate, the Chinese consulate in New York. And this guy has been out on bail after being arrested, and he's back in China being quoted in state-run media saying, hey, I'm going to go back to America and bring home some investment. This is going to be really good for you guys. And for some reason, this guy's allowed to travel back and forth to China, and he's a known agent of the Chinese consulate in New York and one of these benevolent associations, which are just front groups for the CCP. So we know that the CCP have their fingers into the Chinese drug cartels that are ravaging New England right now, and we haven't developed a response. We're beginning to, but we really haven't developed a sophisticated response.
Who's on our side helping?
Yeah, well, the Trump administration, I think, is on our side. This is one of the rare issues where Senator Susan Collins and President Trump agree and support each other in the response. Senator Collins, I know it's got to be a big threat if it brings those two together.
You ain't kidding.
To make common cause. But I'll say Senator Collins has been on this since even before I was. She's been paying attention to this, and every intelligence official, whether it's the Biden administration or the Trump administration, she asks them what they're doing and what can be done to combat Chinese drug cartels in New England. And I think she was very complimentary of the Trump Justice Department for moving forward with an indictment in the District of Massachusetts last week. And I think if you have Senator Collins and President Trump in agreement on something, then this is a rare area where maybe the federal government can move fast, but it's going to depend again on having the political will to do it. We still don't have a U.S. attorney in Maine. We're going to need a U.S. attorney to pick up some of the balls that were dropped under President Biden. And we have a Democratic governor here in Janet Mills who is more interested in going to war with President Trump over boys and girls sports than in the Chinese drug cartels that have taken over the state. She still has yet to utter a single word about this criminal conspiracy in her state. And we proved that her brother, Paul Mills, was actually doing business with the Chinese cartels, has served as a real estate attorney to transfer a property that was an illicit marijuana grow to the ownership of a Chinese national living in China. And no one will report on it in Maine. You've already given more attention to that story just by having me on than anyone here in Maine.
It's remarkable how well our enemies have surrounded us, and they're inside of the house now, and most people are not paying attention. And quite honestly, this is the one place that I agree with President Trump. I want the answers to the Epstein files, but these things are going to kill us a lot faster than that. That has to be solved, but things like this must be solved today. And the Senate, you not having a U.S. attorney in the state of Maine now, that's because of the Senate. They're just dragging their feet on all of the attorneys. They've got to pass and confirm all of the U.S. attorneys. Get them out there. Pam Bondi, we can scream all we want about Pam Bondi. She can't do anything without a U.S. attorney. Can't.
Well, I'll say in Maine, Trump needs to make a nomination first. There hasn't even been a nomination. And so I think that there's some wrangling going on. But I would agree, on two fronts. One, the Senate needs to start speeding along these nominations so that the Trump administration can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think that we certainly should have the power and the intelligence to handle the Epstein disclosures at the same time we're fighting the infiltration of Chinese drug cartels who are working as agents of the Chinese Communist Party, because they have no good intentions whatsoever for the people of the United States. And just to think about the callousness and just absolutely a vile amoral quality of these people, they're enslaving their own kind. Like they're trafficking poor peasants from China here through Mexico, taking their passports and locking them up at grow houses in rural Maine until they've worked off their snakehead debt. These are people who are profiting from literal human slavery. So if you think that there's any kind of anti-American activity or anti-Western activity that is beyond consideration for them, you're wrong. We're dealing with a real evil here, real evil.
I can't thank you enough. We have to have you on again. Maybe we'll do a podcast with you, Steve. This is such an important subject. Steve Robinson, the Maine Wire editor-in-chief, investigative reporter. You can follow him on the website, themainewire.com. Also, what's the name of your documentary?
The documentary is called High Crimes, and it's at tuckercarlson.com right now. people can go check out the podcast and the documentary. I think that gives a pretty good coverage of the issue. But based on the amount of information that's coming in now, I mean, I could easily make another 90-minute film.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber to Tucker's service, so I'll watch it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Steve. God bless.
Thank you, Glenn.
You bet.